Oh, crap. We're on. Yeah, that's what he wanted.
Oh.
I literally, at 15 seconds to go, said, well, we haven't gone on the air yet. And I looked down to do one more thing. And here we are. And that's what he wanted, Bud. He wanted me to say, oh, shoot, we're on. And now that lives in perpetuity. And John will torment us for the end of time with it. So this is the DLS Dallas Stars pregame show. And we have so much to get to. Will we get to the NHL news that we have? We have a ton. We'll see. Let's start it up. That's close. This is the DLS Dallas Stars pregame show. We have Luddy with some great Spanish pronunciation there. It's Viva las Estrellas. You know what that's Spanish for?
Estrellas.
Yeah, you were close.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's for the stars, like Viva Las Vegas, but it's Viva las Stars.
Is there an exclamation mark in the front of the V?
Yeah, if it's upside down, that's how you do it in Spanish. You put one on either end.
It's not upside down.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I guess it is.
It is. They have an upside down one.
So that's a legit thing right now?
A legit thing.
That was
you should see it in Spanish when they have the upside down.
Well, I'm not
mark.
asking a reporter. He obviously knows. I mean, that's
what he
does. He's a writer. He knows how to write.
I took Spanish
he doesn't write in
for
Spanish.
12 years.
He speaks in Spanish after one beer.
Are you fluent still?
No.
12 years of Spanish? You took 12 years and you can't speak it?
I took Spanish. Yeah, I took it all through college, and then I just...
He had a Bud Zero in the locker room after the skate with us, and I thought he was speaking Russian after that.
Did you like it?
No, he didn't even open it up.
Oh, okay. He was just holding it there for, what do they say, for cosmetic reasons? All right.
There were people there. I was nervous.
Craig Ludwig, Sam Nessler, Owen Newkirk, John Anderson, our producer. This is the DLS Dallas Stars pregame show, getting ready for I look down like I don't know who they're playing. They're playing the Vegas Golden Knights. And the big storyline, there's not a lot of storylines, but there are. So let's start with, this is the first meeting between the two teams since Game 7 of the first round of the playoffs last year. It's their third playoff series last year. 2 times conference final, once in the bubble, once last year. And then, of course, the other conference final, which was 2023. That was a tough one because the Stars lost that one. But they're 2 out of 3. Is that a big deal? You play a team that you, for the first time in the regular season after a playoff series?
Yeah, I mean, it's recent memory of games. Yeah, I mean, you play the playoffs, and I think it's almost becoming our time versus the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah,
and every time there was a regular season game, it always seemed to get ignited right away, and it's a carryover. I mean, it's a team that when you start meeting them, seems like every playoff round, you kind of set it up for the playoffs by trying to win the series against them during the regular season.
Sam, since the 2019-20 season, right? Not the beginning of their expansion franchise, but from then, they've made that. That's because that was their first time meeting in the playoffs, in the bubble, in the conference final. It was the Denis Gurianov overtime winner in Game 6. But 11 regular season games, 19 playoff games between the Stars and the Knights. That's a rivalry now, isn't it?
For sure. And the thing I love about playoff rivalries is that it's not just a heated, if you have a heated game, then maybe you're a rival next time. Someone ends someone's season, which is why those rivalries, like this rivalry right now, is probably more important for Vegas because that's who the Stars are, who ended their season last year. Whereas 2 years ago, the Stars were probably looking forward to traveling to Vegas and getting redemption against them. So it's nice to be the one that ended the other team's season, but expect a big push from a team that got their season ended last season by Dallas.
I look at this game like a track meet. They're both fast teams, and the way that their centermen play and they get up the ice and back and forth. It seems to be to me, it's one of those games you want to be able to watch in person. And it's this Vegas team, they're one of the top teams in the league as far as shots on goal. but then in the top 5 shots against. So they exchange chances at both ends of the rink. So you kind of think it's been one of those exciting kind of games and a lot of scoring chances.
Do you think that's odd, considering Vegas was, built their championship around defending in layers and not letting stuff get through?
Well, and I think some of it is the pairing of Hanifin and Pietrangelo, which you think is a good, but they're both kind of lean forward.
Oh, they're thinking offense.
They're thinking offense, and so I think that I think there's going to be some quality chances, hopefully, for Dallas. Against that pair. And the other thing I said to Owen just before, and I know it's not a big name and it doesn't seem like it's a high-end defenseman, but White Cloud is still hurt for him. And
he was skating in a non-contact jersey today.
Yeah.
So get closer.
But I just think he's a mountain out there. I mean, he's a guy, I've always felt that the decor for Vegas is good. I mean, I think they're a sound decor. It always seems like when you're in the offensive zone, they're where they're supposed to be. They're in front of the net. They have size. They make it difficult to get to the front of the net.
John, since we're talking about it, throw up the Vegas defensive expected pairings tonight. Obviously, Braden McNabb. If you don't remember him, he had a huge hit on Patrick Sharp years ago when he was playing for the LA Kings. And Sharp actually had a concussion because of that. But if you remember last year in the playoffs, he had that huge hit on Stankoven. And on the same shift, Jamie Benn leveled him with a clean open ice hit, took him right off his feet, and that was an amazing moment. Sam, I still can't believe that Vegas somehow keep that up for a second, John, that they pried Shea Theodore out of Anaheim, and Anaheim's still hurting from that.
Yeah, and they have, I think Luds was talking about before the show, this is a tough team to play against because a lot of to do with it is that group right there. Right? And they've lost a couple guys here and there throughout because of the salary cap and things like that. But they are a very tough team to play against. And I think it's the reason they're tough to play against is because they have that speed that Luds was talking about that allows them to break open and get off the rush. And then they can beat the crap out of you if the game gets tight in the corners as well. And you're right. Shea Theodore is a great player. It's funny when you get those sometimes once in a while, right? You get the guy who everyone's like, why did they get rid of that guy? And then he gets even better and even better and even better, and it gets worse for Anaheim. So I don't know. Maybe they'll like their new guy over there in Anaheim now.
I'm not sure. For some reason, Theodore reminds me, I think, of Chris Letang. I don't even know why. I mean, they're both kind of wiry and they kind of
but solid. They're just offensive.
Yeah. I mean But I see him kind of coming up the ice, and Theodore, he's a great skater, right? And Letang's a great skater too. And they kind of snake their way up the ice. They can play east-west up there. So
think about that. Anaheim wanted so badly to protect Josh Manson that they lose Shea Theodore, and then they lose Manson anyway, and he's playing in Colorado. And I wanted the Stars to go after Manson. I love the way he plays. Again, maybe not for a top 6 role, or a top 4 role, but gosh, if you have him, kind of like what you're talking about with White Cloud, physical, imposing, he's out there.
He's kind of like the guy that's the news of the day.
Well, we'll get to that.
But I mean, they're kind of alike.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He plays like his dad did. I mean, he's got that edge to him, and he's big, strong. He likes to hit, but he reminds me a little bit of Trouba. Younger and skates a little bit better and things like that than Trouba. So yeah, I love Manson also. All
right, I've got a couple clips on this, and I wanted you guys to react to it. So here's Pete DeBoer this morning, or at least for Vegas this morning. It was this afternoon in Dallas, where he was asked about the rivalry with Vegas because they played so many times now.
Yeah, big rivalry. I think just with the last 2 playoff years. I mean, obviously, I think 13 playoff games between the 2 teams in the last 2 seasons. So that tends to get the blood and the temperature up a little bit. So, yeah, really tough building to play in as a visiting team because you've got to manage the momentum that they can create in here because 1 goal can turn into 2 or 3 against pretty quickly if you don't stop the bleeding and make sure you don't let the crowd take the game over.
Now, he has another clip that where he talks about some tactics that I really want you to dive into, Luds, because it's fascinating. But here's the other side of the rivalry, and this is the guy of the day for Vegas. It's Mark Stone, who's coming off of IR to return to the lineup tonight after missing the entire month of November, 14 straight games with what he called a muscle pull.
I'm not so sure. Like I said, I haven't been in the battle really much lately, so it's kind of hard for me. I'm just focused on getting in the lineup. So, but yeah, I mean, it's like playing good teams, right? It's like when Winnipeg was in here, when Edmonton was in here, teams that have put themselves in positions to compete in the playoffs. There's usually a little bit more buzz in the room and attention to detail.
You mentioned, Mark, the playoffs last year, but it's been 2 years in a row. Is there a fair amount of bad blood, you think, that's kind of built up in those series?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you never like to lose. I think both teams are pretty disappointed losing to each other. It's obviously been some change in our locker room, some change in their locker room, but both teams still have the same goal, and that's to get into the playoffs and compete to win. So that's what makes these games, more important. Is both teams are trying to get to the same goal, which is win the Stanley Cup. But first, you have to play these meaningful games to kind of hopefully get your spot, get yourself into a better spot in the standings.
It's interesting, Sam, because last year the Stars were clearly the better team, although Vegas was a legit opponent. Kind of felt like it should have been a conference final level because they really did push Dallas. The year before, Vegas was clearly the better team as they went on to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, it was like, I think we talked about it before, where the Stars were close to winning the Stanley Cup the last 2 years, but I think everyone can agree last year felt a heck of a lot different than 2 years ago. 2 years ago kind of felt like, all right, we're not, it's not like we don't deserve to be here, but a lot of people didn't feel this was the team that could win a Stanley Cup, really has a chance to win a Stanley Cup. Last year it was, this team should win the Stanley Cup and this team should definitely make it to the Stanley Cup, and they ended up not doing it. So it's kind of they got one, the Dallas got one, and now it's up to see what happens. But Vegas is such an interesting team to me. I looking at their stats today, and they have two guys at the top with Eichel and Barbashev with 38 and 28 points, and then Stone, even though he's only played 13 games, is actually third in points. So that they have a ton of top heavy scoring, but they also have a ton of guys in that 10 to 12 point range. So I almost want to call them a top-heavy team, but then they're also kind of a deep team. So it's just Vegas. It always seems to be big question marks when you play Vegas. So it'll be interesting to see what they roll out tonight, especially with Stone returning.
Well, let's see the forward group for the Golden Knights tonight. As expected, Mark Stone on the top line with Ivan Barbashev and Jack Eichel. That's a legit first line. Here's the interesting thing, Luds, is the development of Barbashev, who was a fourth-line center for St. Louis, who's now their leading goal scorer. And that's kind of the storyline here, because there are a lot of no longer Knights. Chandler Stevenson gone after this past season. Jonathan Marchessault, William Carrier, Alec Martinez, Logan Thompson, lesser extent Paul Cotter and Michael Amadio. And suddenly the likes of Dorofeyev, Barbashev, and Howden are their leading goal scorers, even though Eichel is, dishing out points. It's a different cast. I mean, Tomas Hertl's there too. They've got some good players, but this is an evolving roster.
It's a heavier roster. And I like Carlson. It's funny, that Vegas team, I think they replaced all their doors with revolving doors. As many players come and go through there. And, it's hard sometimes to see some of those guys go. But yeah, even the guy down there on the right side, Kolazar, he's a heavy guy.
Remember 2 years ago in the playoffs?
Skate, yes.
He was a real problem in, I think it was games 5 and 6 of that series.
Just
they
coming
lost
to the net.
And the Stars lost that fourth line. Yep. And then last year they got better, and their fourth line was more effective.
Yeah, again, it's nice to have that kind of depth, but they're just and when you talk about Stone, it seems like he's a veteran at coming back. He sits out, he gets out with injury or something like that, but I can remember a couple different times he's come back and he's had a good game. He's had a big game. He's had a couple goals, and he had a goal and a couple assists. So, keep an eye on this guy that's been, I guess, resting for a month.
I'm grinning because I love when you say something that ties in with one of the clips I pulled today. Here's Bruce Cassidy, the head coach of the Vegas Golden Knights, literally saying
I didn't know this.
What Luddy said.
Is there a place that he has an immediate impact? There's five defensive players.
I'd say at right wing, Darren, I would say. Well, listen, there's going to be rust. There always is. But with him, it seems like there's less. He's such a cerebral player, and you don't lose that. So, the hands, he's got great hands. So I imagine he'll take a few touches. But he's been working on that in practice. It's not like he hasn't been around the group at all. So I think that part. I think for him, it'll be a little bit of being around people, flying around. We haven't had a lot of those physical practices. But so his immediate impact to me will be, I would think the power play for sure, right? That's a drop-off area that he's really gives us a lot of options from down there. We've plugged in different guys. Jackson, Barbie have, kept up a pretty good pace. But he's only going to make that better. PK, we've had different guys roll through. We don't take a lot of those, so I'm sure he'll ease his way back in there. But probably more with his offensive play, I guess, side of the puck.
He made the joke because the reporter, I don't know if you could hear it real well, asked him what kind of impact will he make coming back in the lineup, and so Cassidy goes, well, probably at right wing, which was hilarious. But then he went on to talk about how quickly he gets back, just like you said.
Well, and the other thing about it, he's an emotional player. Like when he scores a goal, you would think it was Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Finals. Like every goal to him is important, and I think he's the emotional lightning rod on that team. And I think when he comes back, he expects to do something that brings the rest of the group up. And again, he's a hard worker. He skates both ends. He plays hard. It's a reason, they went out and got him to start with from Ottawa. But I mean, he's a guy, I think, that sets the example for the rest of the group, the way that they want that team to play.
Now, Sam, I thought that as much as he was a lift coming back into the lineup for the playoffs last year, and there was a big talking point that Mark Stone wasn't one of the more impactful forwards for Vegas, I thought it was Jack Eichel, who was by far their best forward.
Yeah, Eichel's one of those guys, and I think I even saw it in the chat. Eichel's just scares me if my team is playing against him. He's just one of those guys that finds a way to make an impact. And the Stars got lucky a couple times playing him early on in his Vegas tenure, and then he started to really get used to it and get fully healthy. And he has been the Jack Eichel that we remembered from his Buffalo days early on in the last couple of seasons now. And he's just got that lethal shot, right? He's finds a way to get the puck on net a lot. And then every time I think of him, he's going to shoot. Just make sure you block his shot. How many of those passes did he make to Marchessault or one of those other guys in the playoffs? So he's a lethal player and very, very effective. A little bit like Matt Duchene, where he can pretty much do about anything with the puck.
He can, and when he shoots, Sam, it's deceiving. It's funny when I watch Eichel skate. It's like he skates straight up and down all the time. He's always standing up. It doesn't seem like he's in a shooting position, and he's got such a great release from standing up high, and where a lot of guys will get down and they'll get their body into it. He can shoot the puck just as hard as the rest of them can, and you really don't know it's coming because he doesn't appear to be loading up to take a shot.
All right, let's talk tactics about this, because here's Pete DeBoer getting a question, and then Razor asked him a follow-up, and I want you guys both to just hear this, because this is more details of the game, not just, we got to get the pucks deep and skate hard.
They're great off the rush, great through the middle of the ice with their speed, Eichel and Karlsson, and how they get the puck to the middle of the ice. I think they're the best team in the league for me on the walls, making the next play under pressure, the Mark Stones of the world, Tommy Hurdle, big bodies that can really do a good job on the walls, getting pucks to the middle of the ice to that speed. So that's always the most dangerous piece.
Is there anything that you guys have done well in the victories over them?
To eliminate that, you got to run really good forecheck routes, be above their speed. You got to make really good pinch decisions. If you're 6 out of 10 on your pinches, you're going to be in trouble. You gotta, if you're pinching, you gotta win it, and if you can't be in between, and if you're not sure, you can't go, because Eichel and Karlsson and that speed through the middle of the ice is always a threat.
Now, the Stars didn't have a horrible game against the LA Kings, but they had some bad pinches, and that could cost them again tonight.
That's part of a conversation that he's had with his team. And, he's talking about them, letting him know this is. We know how this team plays. They do come up through the middle of the ice, and there's a lot of pucks from Vegas that when pucks come around the wall in their own zone, usually they'll come low, and so as a winger that gets it on the wall, you can pop it backwards, because normally the traffic is above the winger. They pop it backwards, or they're going to hit somebody like Jack Eichel coming through the middle of the ice. And there's really a message to the guys, because I know that we've seen Miro pinch in a couple times, and Essa's been doing it lately. Essa getting down around the front of the net. But you've got to be aware, and you better pinch at the right time. Most important thing is, if you're going to go down the wall, you have to look over your shoulder, depending on what side you are, and make sure that you got somebody, you got a high forward there. And if there's not, you got to be careful, because it's going to be an outnumbered rush, and we've seen a few of those coming up through the middle of the ice against these guys, the Stars lately.
Sam, the idea that you can get into run and gun with the Golden Knights, kind of with listening to Luddy talk about that being careful, kind of makes me suggest the Stars will play a more conservative game, which isn't their strength. It's not their strength. It's not their MO because they want to kill you in transition. Could we see them being a little safer to limit the mistakes and chances against, and then try to pounce on mistakes the other way?
Yeah, I think so. Luddy, I think you just mentioned perfectly, throwing it up the wall and chipping it out. Where does that sound familiar? I think somebody at your alumni skate did a really good job of getting it on the wall.
Oh, here we go.
No, but in all seriousness, Luddy said it perfectly. If you remember, I distinctly remember at least those first 3 games when the Stars went down 3-0 a couple of years ago. It was just odd man rush after odd man rush. And Vegas, like I just talked about, they have some lethal guys. They don't have Marchessault anymore, so that's one they don't have. But they just basically replaced it with another one. So they do a great job. And then remember last year, some of the plays that Eichel would make. I mean, those 2-on-1, 3-on-2, whatever passing plays, if they get an odd man rush, it seemed like it was a 70% chance they were either going to get a very good scoring chance or put it in the back of the net. So I think it's not necessarily safe, but definitely thinking twice about those pinches, because Dallas believes that if they don't give up odd man rushes, they have a very good chance to win the game. And if you've watched a lot of the Stars games this year, which all you guys have, a lot of times they lose games. They get in trouble with those odd man rushes, like we just talked about in LA. And it usually comes from either some sort of pinch or some of the things we saw with that Luds broke down of just defensemen not keeping a head on a swivel and catching guys that were flying out of the zone on the off wing. So I think it's just something you have to really, really pay attention to. And on the first note that Pete made about the boards battles, he knows these guys so well, right? He not only coached Vegas, but he also coached Hertl, and he knows that San Jose team where he knows how they like to play. Hertl's the perfect fit in Vegas, not just because he's such a skilled guy, but because he fits right into that type of play. And that's something that we'll see tonight. That, we talked about physicality after LA. This is the kind of physicality we need to see from Dallas. Not lining guys up at center ice, but finding ways to end those cycles and finding ways to win those battles on that half wall, I think is going to be key.
It'll be interesting to see if Dallas takes a page out of their book a little bit, because when Vegas comes down, they get tons of pucks. Now, I was surprised today to see that their top 2 teams in shot, and Carolina was like 4th, which we always think about Carolina being that team. And because Dallas, their MO was kind of make that extra pass. And I've always said that Vegas has a lot of, structure in front of their net. So, but they are a team that gives up a lot of rebounds and actually lead the league in giving up rebound goals. So, it tells me that they play in front of their net, but sometimes they don't do a very good job there. So if you get there, you got to follow your shot up. You get it to the net, follow your shot up, you may get a second chance. Jason Robertson, I'm calling Robo for a rebound goal tonight.
Well, here's Bruce Cassidy talking about playing against Dallas on the tactical front.
I think our games against Dallas are always good. They're always, to me, close, typically low scoring, tight checking. I think each team knows each other well. So I think both teams usually are at, if they're not their A game, they're certainly B+. I think there was once last year we went in there and we had it was a one-sided on our side. I think it was 6-1, but that typically is not the case. I expect another close game, and I think both teams would get up for each other fairly easily, probably because of the playoffs.
That was the dad's trip.
Was it? Yeah. Oh, there you go. That explains it.
So that, if you couldn't hear, was the reporter saying that was the dad's trip. And so then Cassidy goes, oh, well, we won 6-1. We showed out for the dads. That doesn't always happen, though. I've seen some Stars games where dad trips didn't go very well. I think there was one where they went like 0 for 2 on a California swing. So it doesn't always work out, but sometimes it does.
It's a nice dad's trip. I wish I had a dad's trip when I was playing. Luds, did you guys do that back in the day?
No.
I mean,
that's a relatively recent thing.
Yeah, that's only happened.
Yeah,
I thought it was really cool when it first happened, and now there's the mom's trips.
Yep.
Why not?
Yeah.
Moms
are up there getting all boozed up in the suite. Like, let them go.
So here's Pete DeBoer on the first meeting with Vegas after the playoffs, or sort of our storyline.
2 different teams than we were even last spring, obviously, but still a lot of the same players. I think it's more than about last year is about this year. I mean, we're both fighting for positioning. Vegas has been one of the best teams in the league to date so far, and we're obviously fighting to hunt teams above us down in the conference, and they're one of them. So, there's a lot at stake.
It's interesting you talked about how they're two different teams, meaning that they're not the same teams, either of them, than they were when they met in the playoffs last year. Different personnel. Stars don't have Chris Tanev anymore. Tyler Seguin is out on IR for an extended period of time now. As I rattled off the Golden Knights, I mean, Chandler Stevenson, Jonathan Marchessault, William Carrier, Alec Martinez, Logan Thompson, Paul Cotter, Michael Amadio. I mean, they really cycled through their group. So they're not the same teams.
Yeah, well, I guess from personnel, when I hear that we're two different teams, or we're different than we were last year, that you played differently. And so I'm thinking Dallas still, we know the way that Dallas wants to play, and I think Vegas has a way that they like to play. So I guess from the standpoint of different players, but you could say that every year. Every year you have different players. True. I don't get it.
It didn't feel different when I saw this morning. Oh, and I think you wrote about this too. And you see Mark Stone returns from injury after a long time out, and Aiden Hill starts, and I was like,
yeah, where have we seen this movie before?
It does feel like a recurring storyline. Here's something that I thought was interesting. The Golden Knights got absolutely killed at home a couple of games ago by Utah, 6-0. It was on home ice. They got embarrassed.
Yeah.
Well, they've given up 1 goal in their 2 games since. And here's Bruce Cassidy on some team improvements from that 6-goal game.
Checking, stopping in the slot. There's certainly a few chances the other night, but there are a lot of one and done. So I thought we're doing a better job taking care of the house. Same with Edmonton. Third period was a little bit probably more than we'd like around the front of the net, but I think we've done a good job clearing out getting the first save, clearing the rebounds. Obviously, we didn't give up a power play against Edmonton, only one in Anaheim. They scored a goal late, but it was a kind of a flash screen, so I thought we did a good job in the PK, so discipline's been good. I think taking care of the puck between the blue lines much better than we did against Utah. We addressed that. That was one of our poorer efforts, and it led to us have to dig a pretty big hole. So I think we've been more conscious of when to make plays and when to sort of drive pucks deep or play behind them.
The interesting thing of Vegas, I mean, obviously they defend with layers, but the one save and not giving up a second chance, that's like their big defensive MO, isn't it?
That's why I was surprised when I saw that they're the team that gives up the most rebound opportunities and allow those rebounds, because they always have been so good in front of their own net, and they're always difficult to get that second chance. So maybe it's because White Claw's not in the lineup. I don't know. I like that guy. He's a big mountain back there.
Well, John, let's show the one last thing. There's no lineup changes for the Stars. So here's the forward group for Dallas, same as before. The big thing is Sam Steele playing in the third line center with Dodonov and Ben. Obviously, we were talking about Stankoven with Duchesne and Marchman because of Sagan's injury. Here's the defense and the goaltending. Oettinger will play as a little Team USA versus Canada as Aiden Hill's on that Four Nations Canada roster. Here is a response from Pete DeBoer when he was asked this morning about Sam Steele playing up on the third line.
He's done a good job. He's a skilled guy. He was a first-round pick. Put up a lot of points in the Western League, so he's always had that skill level. I think he's got that fourth line mentality from how he's entered the league and some of the stops he's had and the roles he's had to play. But he's got underrated skill, and I think he's at the age now where he's ready to take a step. I talked to him in his exit meeting last year, that when you get the opportunity to move up in the lineup, you got to take advantage of it, and I think he's trying to do that.
Sam on Sam.
Yeah, I've loved. I think we talked a lot about Sam Steele because he like Pete said, he's not just that guy that plays that fourth line role, which is why he's able to jump up in that third line spot or even higher if he needs to. But he's really impressed me with that skill side of his game, because he's so good in his defensive end. He can help kill penalties. He can do so many things that you expect him to do in that role. But he's made some really skilled plays. He's got really good hands, and his speed is, once you see him in person, it really blows you away how fast and quick he is on his skates. And I think that just helps it helps whatever line gets on there. Similar to Stankoven being that always going super speedy guy, Steele brings a similar type of thing, a little less offensive skill, but he brings the speed. He can drive the line a little bit, and he can help out back on his own end. So he's really impressed me. And I think that has been a key for the Stars with his success, because there's a couple players that are playing a little bit out of what we would expect them to be. And I think that's been big for the Dallas because there's other guys that are playing well below where we expect them to be, right? So that's a key player for me going forward.
Everything that Sam just said makes him a 200-foot player. You know, and for people that don't know what we're talking about, I mean, you play at both ends of the rink, and he goes from goal line to goal line. But for the most part, he's a straight line player. You know, he doesn't play east-west, and, you know, he understands, he puts pucks in at the right time, especially when you're going to, you know, you're playing with Jamie. I mean, you know, because Jamie's kind of the same kind of guy. I think there was a period where Jamie, and it was when he was playing with Tyler, I thought he started to play a little bit like Tyler, a little more east-west, and it didn't really lend to his game. And Jamie's game is back to where I think he's, you know, that guy that can punish you at both ends of the rink. And that's how Steele, I think those two play really well together. And I think whoever plays on the right side, because they play like that, you kind of have to hang around and kind of play on the perimeter of the high danger area, because there should be some pucks laying there where you can kind of swoop in and get an opportunity.
The joke I could make is last year the Stars lost all 3 games in the regular season series to Vegas. 0-1-2. Shootout loss, overtime loss, and then that 6-1 drubbing on the dad's trip for Vegas. That was back in December of a year ago. Then they won in the first round playoff series. The year before, Dallas won all 3 games. A 4-0 win in Vegas. That was Pete DeBoer's first game as Stars head coach going back to Vegas, the team he'd just been fired from. So obviously they were all wound up for that. Then a shootout win and a shootout win to take the season series in a sweep, and they lose in the conference final. So do you want to get beaten all the games in the regular season so you can win in the playoffs? We'll see if that happens. Luddy, we are out of time, but I have to give you and Sam a chance to talk about the storyline of the day with Jacob Trouba.
Probably if you're listening to him and reading some things, it seems like the way it went down was a little disappointing, you know, for him personally. And I think it's a tough way that for a guy that's wearing a letter, and mainly the C in New York City, a tough way to have to lead a team, to not, I don't want to say get forced out. We don't know all the things, but we just know what we hear. And so, but it kind of went quick. What's that, Sam?
I said forced out.
Yeah,
Forced out.
Okay, I didn't.
You can say it.
It got booted out. But it's I don't like it. I don't like, and it's not the first time this general manager has done it. You know, so I don't like the way that they use the whole waiver thing and things like that.
As a threat.
Yeah. You know, they either take it or and bottom line is that if you go on waivers, your no trade thing is out the window.
And whoever claims you,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
The only way you can is if you had a full no move,
right? Which
he did not have. All right, last thing. I said last thing, but I have one more last thing. Starting lineups tonight. Jake and net. Jason Robertson, Rope Hintz, Wyatt Johnston with Lyubushkin and Heiskanen to start for Dallas. Vegas, of course, with Aiden Hill in net, going with their 4th line. Kolasar, Pearson, and Waugh.
You know what that means.
With Pietrangelo and Hannafin on defense.
You know that big fire thing that they spin around up there? They're going to make sure that line keeps that fire thing and them crowd into it. Hey, by the way, Sam, you know what time it is?
Game time.
Yes. We'll see you afterwards.
I believe that they are going to crush these guys tonight.
We all silly like the mayor.